we'll be heading over to Nigeria in a stark reminder that Nigeria's fight against insurgency is far from over. Suspected Boko Haram fighters ambushed military forces in Borno State, killing at least 7 soldiers and capturing 13 more, including their commanding officer. And this comes amid a very, very worrying surge in attacks on villages, on military bases, and key supply routes across the northeastern part of Nigeria, where violent extremist Boko Haram fighters and factions continue to almost adapt and strike with lethal efficiency, despite years and years of military campaigns against them by the Nigerian government and by the Nigerian forces. And with us now to unpack what this security threat that is Boko Haram, why does this seem to be a fight that is never ending from the Nigerian government's point of view? And is there an ending in sight? Are there some positives that we can pull out from this in this long-standing fight? Are there some grounds that have been gained in the years that Boko Haram has continued to be a threat in Nigeria? And what does this mean for civilian communities where you always hear of these kidnappings of school children, villages being raided, and people being mass murdered and kidnapped? Is Nigeria winning the fight against Boko Haram, or is this a struggle that maybe needs external interference, maybe from other African states, UN, AU? So we'll be unpacking all of that with a Nigeria-based journalist, Immam Shuaib. Imam, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate you giving us the time. Always a pleasure having you on Salam Media.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning.
I think before we get to, the key analysis and just the broader questions, we can just start with a bit of scene setting. Looking back at this attack that happened quite recently, where essentially there were 13 soldiers that were captured. It is suspected that Boko Haram infiltrated and essentially killed people in a Borno State military base. Can you give us more insight on that and what really happened there?
Okay, thank you very much for having me. What really happened is an attack by ISWAP member in Bindudul village, where the military base was attacked, and in that attack, about 7 soldiers lost their life and 13 other ones were captured. This is a type of renewed attack that is being introduced by ISWAP to attack the military base or attack military convoy, like it happened some weeks ago. The military convoy were attacked and landmines were planted, and then they stepped on it, and then they were attacked, and they came under serious gunfire. This is a new method that the ISWAP are adopting now, different from their conventional pattern.
To get to the cracks of it, how significant is this attack where you literally have soldiers being killed and kidnapped, compared to past incidences where it would be kidnappings on school kids or it would be villages that would be raided? What does this say about Boko Haram's current operational capability, the nerve to face the military head on like this and come out with what seems like a victory for them?
Yeah, essentially, like I said, it's a renewed pattern of attack where they attack military bases or attack military convoy. The essence is to gain, more attention, and they kidnap or military people so they can get attention, and this serves as a threat to military operations. Because from these kidnapped soldiers, they are able to, subject them to some, torture, which will lead the military to expose more of, their operational mechanisms to these insurgents. And that's why they are again. We said it happened some weeks ago where they attacked the military base and they came, under a convoy, and they came under serious military fire. So this is a renewed pattern that they are using, instead of different from the usual kidnapping of school children or kidnapping of people or attacking, civilians. They are now facing the military, and this poses a lot of challenge. But why it is a difficult challenge is that it's like some sort of guerrilla war, some sort of guerrilla pattern where military bases are targeted and then are attacked. So this pattern is sometimes very difficult to confront, because these people attack when you least expected, or they plan a particular attack, come to the base, reach out to their target, hit, and then they go. This is another pattern they are using. So essentially, to be able to do this or control this, or to show military, counter-insurgency efforts, we have to build on intelligence gathering so that we can identify when such type of plans are coming up, the issues around who they want to attack, where they want to attack, and what their operational plans. So through intelligence gathering, we can be able to attack this. But this is essentially a new pattern that they are adopting, which is some sort of guerrilla warfare.
How would you analyze how the government of Nigeria has dealt with the threat of Boko Haram? I think it was back in July 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So almost 17 years to date, where the world started to know about Boko Haram and the threat that they pose to Nigeria. From 2019 to now, your analysis of how the government has fared against this group, because from the outside world, it looks like a losing battle. You even have other, groups like SWAP that are also emerging, and it looks like it's a war that Nigeria is not necessarily winning from the outside world, at least. From a Nigerian point of view, being inside of Nigeria and knowing and understanding, a bit more the intricacies of how the Nigerian government has been dealing with Boko Haram, how would you analyze it? Would you say it's a war that is being won, or it's a stalemate at this point, or the Nigerian government is maybe on the back foot?
Essentially, since July 2009 that this insurgency started, the war had lingered for a very long period of time. And one of the reasons is that there are a lot of factors that are responsible for this, from corruption and administrative bottleneck within the government cycle, to infiltration of the intelligence system of the Nigerian military, to different or emerging patterns of the attack or the warfare by the insurgents. So these have been the pattern, different patterns, and there are a lot of issues that have affected, the oppression of the government. So essentially, it has been like a trend of today the government is on top, and tomorrow the insurgents comes up with another pattern, which the government perhaps maybe they are not aware of, or they are not envisaging. You will see that it started initially as a guerrilla pattern of warfare, where the insurgents will come and attack individual security agencies. For instance, it was like a sort of shooting, targeted shooting before, and then it metamorphosed into attacking military bases, and then it metamorphosed into abduction of school children to gain more attention, and then another new pattern now is attacking the military convoy or military voices, to planting of landmines. This is a pattern that keeps changing. It's not a definite pattern that the government will say it has won. The government is actually putting in effort, and the militaries are also putting their best, but they are operating under a very difficult terrain. They are operating under a difficult situation. There is a vast majority of land from Borno linking Niger and linking Chad. And this makes, coupled with the porous border that we have, and vast majority of land that we have around those areas, it makes it difficult for the insurgents to have free movement and free inflow of weapons and so on. So these are factors that have been making things difficult for the government and the military forces to be able to cope this situation. Essentially, they have to build on intelligence gathering. They have to, put in more effort by border patrol and border control. And of course, they have to ensure that they are ahead of the game, because as they are winning war in this aspect or in this situation, the insurgents are coming up with another pattern, like we have seen, the pattern of kidnapping school children, the pattern of kidnapping, military forces, intercepting military information and so on, and infiltrating the sources of information and operations of the military. So this has been a war that is not actually won, but today the government is on top, and then the insurgents will come up with another pattern to to the amazement of the government. So it's a continuous war, and of course, this war is a pattern of ideological situation. So ideological wars, ideological ideas or extremist ideas are not won essentially alone with military, power or firepower, because this is an ideology that has been spreading in the last 15 years or 16 years. So it's an ideology that has been spread over time. It has already been planted within the society. So the government also and the military also needs to look at the pattern of, ideologically engaging, the people, so that they don't recruit more people into the system. So there is more recruitment into the system, and that is why the situation continues.
There was a point, I think it was under former president, the late former president Muhammad Buhari, in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. It was during his first term where it looked like Boko Haram was contained, and it was even, I remember, it was even declared technically defeated. These were the words from the
Yes.
government. What do you think worked from that point, and what changed that allowed the insurgency to regroup and gain ground like they have in the years after that?
Essentially, when that administration of the former president came up, there was this, political will and commitment, to fight the insurgents and to bring the insurgency to an end. So initially, there was commitment on the part of the government providing the necessary weapons and logistics for the military to be able to, fight the insurgents. There was a rejig in the military formation, change in some, heads of this military formations, and that worked because there was commitment, there was, government political will to fight the insurgents, and essentially that yielded result because more weapons were acquired, all the logistic supports that were required by the military were provided, and they did well and they fought. However, as the government recorded this, progress, they relaxed, and that gave opportunity, just like it happened in 2009. After 2009, insurgency, the government went to relax, and then it gave the insurgents opportunity to regroup. This is exactly what repeated itself after 2015, and the insurgents regrouped again, and of course, they brought up a new pattern of attack, and this is the situation. So in military, when you fight the enemy and you think you have technically defeated them, you don't relax. Even after operation, you go for mop-up operation, and then you go deep into intelligence gathering to be able to ensure, are these people regrouping? Are there still remnants of these people or traces of these people? And when you gather those intelligence, you are able to, extend your operation. This didn't happen. After they believe that they have been technically defeated, and of course, all the local government area in Borno State that were under the insurgents were recovered, the government went into relaxation. So this gave the insurgents opportunity to go and regroup and change pattern. And of course, the military were relaxed. They didn't do more in terms of intelligence gathering, and this is why they have to regroup again, and of course start renew their operations.
Mm, mm, mm. How difficult do you think the emergence of ISWAP for those that don't know, being another jihadist militant group that essentially broke away or split from Boko Haram in 2016, how difficult do you think their emergence has made it for the Nigerian government and for Nigerian forces who are already stretched, to be honest, to deal with this new threat threat? Do you think the emergence of ISWAP made it even more difficult because now more resources need to be allocated and then already stretched military, already stretched intelligence, and there were threats now coming from different angles also?
Yeah, essentially the ISWAP is, a combination of a split of Boko Haram insurgents, and it's also a collection of, members around Chad, around Lake Chad Basin, around, Niger, and some other, neighboring African countries. So it's a renewed pattern in which these insurgents have different type of men around, a different part of men form part of, the ISWAP, and they have a renewed pattern of, attack in addition to what the military have been facing again. So this made it difficult because, like you mentioned, the military were already overstretched and they were already losing their men on the battlefield, and they will have a renewed pattern, like a strengthened and reinforced pattern of Boko Haram are coming to attack now. So this has made it difficult, coupled with the fact that there is like I mentioned, a relaxation on the part of the government and a deviation in the political will, because politically they feel they have been technically defeated. So the attention was shifted from security to politicking to re-elections and so on. Because of that, the government's commitment to fighting insurgents was getting somehow reduced, and of course, this gave opportunity for ISWAP, to launch their attack in different patterns. So if they launch attack here, as the military are trying to counter-attack that one, they will launch another attack elsewhere, and of course, it's very difficult for the military to be able to, put a bold, counter, operation to the activities of the ISWAP.
And looking at communities themselves that have been affected by this kinds of insurgency, maybe just taking the conversation a bit away from and beyond the military side of it, how are local communities coping with the insurgency, with the violence, especially some of the displaced families, the towns and villages that are constantly in the shadow of Boko Haram and ISWAP and all of the other, mushrooming insurgency groups?
Now, essentially, after 2015, when this success was recorded by the military, some of the internally displaced people were relocated to their villages, they were relocated to their bases where they were before they were displaced, and of course, things began to pick up. But when this renewed attack came up, it became difficult for people because they couldn't go to farms. And the another angle to it is some of these areas that were recaptured by the military were put on were recaptured by the insurgents were under the administration of these insurgents. So people who are allowed to farm were subjected to some sort of taxes. So the people have two choices: either to go back to the IDP or internally displaced camps, or to stay within the administration of ISWAP. And when you go to farm, you pay taxes and you pay royalties to them. So if you want to farm or you want to fish, you have to pay taxes to the administration. These taxes were what the insurgents are using to continue their administration, acquire more weapons, or they kidnap and collect ransom from these people. So it's actually a difficult situation for people. Even though some of these villages have given their own contribution by way of forming the civilian JTF, it is still there are people that are forming the civilian JTF and giving their own contribution, helping in intelligence gathering, helping in joining the military to lead some of these operations. But essentially, the reality of people are having difficult time staying under the administration of these criminals.
I want to talk about a response now. I think it was a few days ago where we saw current Nigerian President Tinubu visit Turkey, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the things that came out of those conversations, obviously there were talks around trade and around country to country bilateral relations. But one thing which stood out was Turkey or Turkey coming out and saying they are willing to train Nigerian special forces against Boko Haram. How important is that? How important is it to have external interventions to fight Boko Haram, and how difficult has it been because of the regional cooperation? I think quite recently we saw the withdrawal of partners like Niger from a joint task force. Has that worsened, the situation, being able to deal with it regionally, not having partners that are as forthcoming? And how appreciated would the intervention of external countries like Turkey to train the Nigerian forces will be, and the impact that it will have in combating Boko Haram?
The withdrawal of Niger, Burkina Faso, and related countries from, this situation have also created another challenge for the fight against insurgency, because each of these countries have withdrawn, have their contribution and the role they play in terms of exchange of intelligence, in terms of, uh, border control, and so on, and control of weapons across borders. So this is posing a serious challenge. And essentially, the bilateral agreement signed with Turkey is a welcome development, because if you have a challenge, it requires a concerted effort, it requires a cooperation, so that we can external assistance to be able to come in, because this is a collection of fighters who are from Africa and beyond. And of course, you know that we have fighters of ISWAP from Libya, we have fighters from other countries that have joined this. So military exchange of military intelligence and exchange of military tactics from between Nigeria and Turkey will go a great way, or will help a great deal in fighting this insurgent, because there will be new ideas, there will be exchange of new military tactics, there will be exchange of new patterns of intelligence gathering, and of course this support will go a long way in supporting Nigeria to fight these insurgents.
Imam, just before I let you go, we have unfortunately run out of time. Just looking ahead, what would mark a turning point in this fight against Boko Haram, and what signs, if any, are there that Boko Haram's momentum might be checked, that the government has gotten a wake-up call, and they will probably try and do a bit more to try and get back to the levels that we were back in 2015, where it was essentially insolvent? It looked like Boko Haram was defeated.
So the government needs to renew its commitment to fighting insurgency, provide the necessary support and logistics to the military, and have a positive political will towards curbing insurgency. It should also, expand its network and cooperation with other countries that can support it in terms of intelligence sharing, in terms of military tactics, as well as acquire more weapons to be able to fight and confront these insurgents. They should also improve the manpower of the military. There is the need for more recruitment of people, because every day the military are losing personnel. So the need to recruit more people and train them in insurgency fighting, and of course strengthen its border patrol to avoid criminals getting access to our country.
Oh, they have it, Immam Shuaib. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you on Salam Media. Really, really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here.
That was Immam Shuaib giving us an on-the-ground insight into the evolving insurgency in the northeastern part of Nigeria, especially now as Boko Haram's campaign seems to persist. So does the challenges of Nigeria's armed forces. It looks like they're not getting a grip on fighting these insurgency. Good news. Turkey has come out and said, well, we'll help your soldiers, military, special forces, will train them, will help them, give them some tactical know-how, and help them in try and fight Boko Haram. But it's going to be interesting if we're going to be seeing what we saw. I think it was back in 2015, as I mentioned, where it was under the lead former President Mohamed Buhari in his first term. It essentially looked like we've seen the end of Boko Haram. He came out, declared it technically defeated. They were insolvent. They were nowhere near. Their leaders were getting arrested and killed all over the place. But I think from that point until now, it looks like Nigeria has lost a lot of ground, and it's concerning, especially looking at the importance of Nigeria on the African continent, one of the biggest economies, one of the key role players when it comes to African diplomacy and the conversations around Africa and how we present ourselves to the rest of the world. It is concerning. It's a picture that we need to change in the not so distant future. And it doesn't help that the brothers out in the Sahel, Niger, Burkina Faso, have come out and said, well, we don't want to be part of the technical task force, which is going to be fighting Boko Haram. So I think that also leaves a very big gaping hole, that one that needs to be filled. So cooperation in that part of the continent is also very, very important. So yeah, we'll see how the story continues to pan out. We'll give you updates as they come, some expert perspectives on this very, very critical security issue. This has been hashtag Africa Focus with me, Salailo Makwidire, on News and Views. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be with you right after this.